Good morning, everyone. We are Group 3, which will be talking about the self, a reading by George Herbert Mead, and this will be discussed by Rancis Malake and Razi Kitain. So, first, we must define the description of the self. To summarize Mead's description of the self is a dynamic process that emerges through communication, language, and interaction with others. Thus, individuals develop a sense of self through their interaction with others and by the different social rules within society. Also, Mead made emphasis on the self as being composed of two components, the I and the me, which will be discussed later. So, in this reading, Mead characterized the self into 12 parts. The first is the self and the organism. So, this segment of the chapter explores how the unity and structure of the self reflects the interconnectedness between individual identity and societal groups. Moreover, it discusses on the primary premise that the self doesn't exist right from the start when we are born, but it forms through our interactions and experiences with others. All in all, the chapter highlights the influence of social interactions on the formation and expression of the self. However, it also highlights to be careful in interacting with others to avoid dissociation of personality, where you lose yourself for the sake to appease others. Next is the background of the genesis of the self. So here, this segment explores the journey of self-development, tracing its roots from simple gestures to the complex dynamics of human social interactions. It highlights the crucial role of symbols, especially language, in aiding the expression of thought and communication. Moreover, it expands into the connection between artistic expression and communication, demonstrating how artists use symbols to evoke emotions and convey meaning to others. Additionally, it sheds light on the importance about imaginary and organized play in shaping how we see ourselves and our awareness of ourselves, conveying how becoming engaged in different roles and scenarios contribute to our self formation. Lastly, the chapter describes the significance of the rules and organization in games as starting points for self awareness, illustrating how following the rules and integrating roles within structured environments helps us to develop a strong sense of self awareness. Together, these insights provide a comprehensive understanding of the intricate process involved in self development and the interplay between communication, play, and social interactions in shaping our individual identity and consciousness. Third is the play, the game, and the generalized other. So, this segment summarizes that the self and our personal growth are closely connected to different social aspects like cultural norms, relationships with others, and societal structures. When we interact with society, it is said that we switch between playing and following the rules, absorbing the community's overall perspective known as the generalized other. Thus, the way society thinks greatly affects how we behave, molding our personality and character. Hence, it establishes that individuals and society directly influence each other, and that our social identity is constantly changing because of this relationship. Fourth is the self and the subjective. So, this chapter explores how the self is connected between how we think and interact with others. Our sense of self is shaped by the collective experiences that we have within a group of friends. The dynamics of a group of friends not only influence who we are as individuals, but also helps establish a community of norms and culture. As we engage with our peers and consider the perspectives of others, we gain a better understanding of ourselves within the context of a social surroundings. All the while, the chapter also notes how we are deeply rooted in our internal conversations and reflective thinking with our mind. This emphasizes the significance of self consciousness and reflection in shaping our personal identity. Through this point of view, it shows that consciousness and self are distinct concepts, with being consciousness in everything that we do while will directly shape ourself. Therefore, our sense of self is not something that exists from thin air, but rather it emerges from our interactions with others, our cognitive processes, and from being engaged with the world around us. Fifth is the I and the me that I mentioned earlier. So, the I and the me. To summarize, this chapter explores a thorough examination of the complex relationship between the I and the me in the terms of self awareness and social behavior. Elaborating further, the me is developed through social attitudes and societal culture, while the I is the utmost freedom by yourself with no restriction or influence from social situations. It emphasizes that the I serves as a source of freedom and creative expression of an individual, while the me represents the identity influenced by what society deems to be the norm. Despite their distinctiveness, the I and the me are closely intertwined, forming the foundation of an individual's personality and conscious experience. The chapter underscores the ongoing negotiation between personal self and societal self, highlighting the complex human identity and behavior derived from the self being a entity undergoing a dynamic social process. The sixth and last component that will be discussed by me is called the social attitudes and the physical world. So, in this chapter, it explores the complexities of how people socialize, form their identities, and interact with the world around them. It explains that our sense of self is constantly evolving and is influenced by the attitudes and actions of others. This can also be connected with the distinction made between the I and the me, which helps us understand how our personal experiences and societal expectations shape who we are. The chapter also explores how our perception towards objects and nature are influenced by societal culture, while also highlighting the significance we attach to material possessions. Thus, because of our social attachments, our decision making is also affected and influenced, showing the interconnectedness between individual choices and societal norms. Hence, ending with a note that we must consider the broader context, especially when trying to find yourself and the role you play in terms of the bigger picture in all things.
So let us now move over to the mind as individual importation to the social process. George Herbert Mead discusses the mind that it is nothing but the importation of external processes into the conduct of the individual to meet the problem that arises. The thoughts and content put into the mind are an accumulation and product of a series of social interactions that lead to the creation of distinct individuals that is influenced by one another. In my understanding, our thoughts and processes from our minds are not determined, but rather a product of multiple social interactions. Simple things such as how we think, how we tackle problems, and how we identify solutions, how we conduct social interactions, and how we relate to other people are a result of our past experiences. It is our mind that gathers all of these social interactions and ultimately results in our actions and behavior. The I and the me as faces of the self. In this section, Mead further discusses that we, humans, adjust based on the attitude of others depending on the context of social interactions. He states that it is the recognition of the individual as a self, in the process of using his self consciousness, that gives him the attitude of self assertion or the attitude of devotion to the community. We humans have the capacity to recognize our role in society through our intimate relationship with one another. It is by knowing that the society is developed. The foundation of society is a product of multiple individuals who have fully developed themselves, and that it is their self that have attitudes, their minds, and identifications that make our community a whole. According to Mead, the development of self is the most important aspect of development, as it is because of this that the society exists. Here we are able to recognize ourselves to others. Mead says, We cannot realize ourselves except in so far as we can recognize the other in his relationship to us. It is as he takes the attitude of the other that the individual is able to realize himself as a self. The realization of the self in the social situation. One of the phases of the development of the self is the realization of the self in the social situation. We discusses that individuals themselves are not only part of the community as a whole, but are a particular of the community. Specifically, it is an accumulation of individuality that we as a community are formed. In this development of the self, individuals recognize themselves as part of the community and may seek to contribute to it. Part of this realization is that we acknowledge our position among others in that we compare or have a sense of superiority with other people. This leads to inferiority complexes, which is the opposite of superiority. Mead says that inferiority complexes arise from those wants of a self that we should like to carry out but we cannot. It is within us that superiority arises, even in primitive societies. It is this complex development of the self, our realization, and complex thought processes and wants or needs that lead to a complex organized structure of the community. Mead says that the organized structure of every individual self within the human social processes of experience and behavior reflects and is constituted by the organized rational pattern of the process as a whole. But each individual structure reflects and is constituted by a different aspect of perspective of this relational pattern. The contributions of the me and the I. The contributions of the me and the I are influential during social interactions, and their uses vary depending on interests. The me answers to organized attitude of the others, which we naturally assume and which we determine consequently our conduct so far as it is a self-conscious character. This tells us that during social interactions, it is the me that allows us to adapt to various social contexts, which is due to an accumulation of past experiences. Mead also discusses social control as an expression of the me over against the I. It is through the me that we cannot offend people, but rather appease them and the interests of all. An I in a social situation would be his response to social interactions without consideration of other contexts. It is by this action that Mead calls individuals as institutionalized individuals. The social creativity of the emergent self. In this section, Mead discusses the importance of creating a suitable society for the proper development of the self. The me is a member of a social group and represents a group that provides a value and makes a group possible, or rather, the group exists because of the individual me. Furthermore, Mead also tackles that in the process of individual changes, society also changes in parallel, may be desirable or undesirable. Since the individuals constitute the complex, organized society to which we belong, the changes that occur amongst ourselves are also reflected in the society as a whole. Mead further says that an ordered society is essential to us humans, but to enable us to be satisfactorily developed society, there must be an avenue for expression. One example discussed is the difference between primitive society and civilized human society. Primitive human societies are much more determined regarding their thinking and their behavior, in which a pattern is observed from their organized social activity to where they belong. It is in this kind of society that it offers much less individuality or expression that makes it not suitable for the development of the self. A contrast of individualistic and social theories of the self. There are two types of social psychology, one which derives the selves of individuals from the social process in which they are implicated and in which they are empirically interact with one another, and the second one is which derives that process from the selves of the individuals involved in it. According to Mead, the first type assumes a social process or social order as the logical and biological precondition of the appearance of the selves of the individual organisms involved, while the second assumes individual selves as the presuppositions, logically and biologically, of the social process order within which they interact. It is essentially a comparison between individualist theories and social theories. Individualist theories take individuals and their individual experiences as logically before the social process, while social theories do the opposite and take social processes before the individual and their individual experiences. Rather, individualist theories advocate that the interests of the individual should gain precedence to the state of the social group, while social theory states that individuals are a product of social interactions. Essentially, social interactions exist due to individuals according to individualist theories, whilst individuals exist due to social interactions according to social theories. So that is all for our presentation. Thank you for listening.